In this mechanical video, I'm going to show you how to install a rear mech. Okay, so I'll start off with showing you how to take your rear mech off. Maybe it's broken or maybe you're upgrading it. And the very first step to this is to change gear right down to the bottom of the block into your highest gear. So next thing to do is to turn your clutch off if you've got one. Shimano XTR does, so we just push that forward. And now I'm going to undo the bolt that's holding the gear cable into the rear mech. It's a 4mm Allen key on Shimano. On SRAM, I think it's a T25, we might have to check that. Next job is just to chop off that cable end if you've got one on there that keeps that cable neat, so that you can then unthread that gear cable from the rear mech. So I'll pull that out. That's just freed that up. Next job is to split the chain. So you've got a couple of options when it comes to splitting the chain. If you've got a SRAM chain, more than likely you'll have a power link in there, and you can use one of these tools just to push that power link together, and that's going to pop it apart and you can split the chain. This, however, is Shimano, so I have to use a proper chain tool and actually split the chain. You can see here, there's that one pin that you use to join the chain. I'll always split it at that point. So I'm using my proper chain tool just to do that. So now just unthread the chain from the rear mech, so just pulling it over the jockey wheels, and that leaves it free to now remove. On Shimano, it's a 5mm Allen key just here. On SRAM, again, it's a T25, so I'll stick it that way around for now. And just spin that bolt out, keep hold of the mech as it comes out. And that's it, dead easy. Okay, so now to install a rear mech, unsurprisingly, it's actually that same process, but in reverse. But the first thing I'll do before actually doing that is check that my rear hanger, so where my mech mounts the bike, is nice and straight. These do stick out off the bike obviously, and they can get a little bit damaged, so twisted or bent. So they need to be absolutely straight and vertical. So just look down the bike and try and make sure that's right before you put on a new mech, or you might just want to buy a new one of these. So to install this Shimano XTR mech, it's slightly unusual. You can see how this actually goes around either side of that mech hanger. It's more normal to have a rear mech that just sits on this side, but it's pretty easy, to be honest, to install this. Just make sure the threads are nice and clean inside the hanger and on the mech, slightly greased. And you just need to make sure that this B tension screw goes behind this stop on the hanger. So quite easy, but just make sure it sits far enough back, rotate it around so that stop sits on that bolt, and just wind that in. So just be careful when you start this thread off that it's nice and square so you don't cross thread it. They are quite fine, so it can be done. So you can see how that Allen key's spinning nice and freely all the way in. I know that I've done it right. Okay, so now to just thread the chain back through the rear mech with Shimano. Make sure that the writing on the chain faces out, and so the other side there's no text on there at all. And stick it over the cassette, and it goes round the cassette, up and over the top jockey wheel, down and into the cage, and then round the bottom of the bottom jockey wheel. So just make sure you're doing that correctly. There is a guide here on the rear mech as well. You need to make sure that goes to the right side so that it goes straight to that next jockey wheel. So on this one, it's to the back of it, round the bottom of there. And I'll always join my chain down here below the chainstay. So with the chain all threaded through the mech and round the chain rings correctly, I'm just gonna rejoin the chain. And then I might as well turn the clutch back on whilst I'm down here. Okay, so now it's time to thread the cable through. So on this bike, I'm just doing the reverse of what I did before. So thread that cable through, make sure the outer cable is butted right up to that stop. And then it's time to get that cable into that pinch bolt. It's dead easy on this Shimano, it's just straight there. On SRAM, you have a bit of a wheel, so you have to thread it round the wheel and then it bolts down here somewhere, but it's the same theory. So I'm ready to now pinch this cable into the rear mech, but before I do that, I'll make sure the shifter, the barrel adjuster on that is wound clockwise all the way in, so I've got some adjustment after at the shifter for some fine tuning. So pull a bit of tension onto that cable, don't go crazy, just a bit between your fingertips, and then just tighten that bolt down. There's a washer underneath that bolt that's got a flat side on it, so that when you tighten it into the mech, it's not going to spin and it's going to pinch that cable correctly. So just make sure that is sat in the correct sort of orientation before we start tightening that bolt. If you've got a new cable end, it's a good idea to crimp one onto that cable to keep it nice and tidy. And the final job is to set up that rear mech by setting the cable tension on your barrel adjuster on the shifter, setting your B tension screw and your high and low screw. We've done a whole video about that. Click up there, that'll take you through to that one. Click on the GMA logo to subscribe, or click just down there for how to split your chain. Give us a thumbs up if you found this video useful.